What is up, duelists, and welcome to a Genesis point update from October. Gonna react to the new point changes. These are, of course, a little bit longer than usual ban list updates, so maybe some individual changes here we're gonna go over a little bit quicker, but the more interesting things we can definitely talk about for a moment. What am I expecting from this? As a big fan of Genesis format and the philosophy behind it, I'm really hoping they're gonna tackle some of the top tier decks in the format. Reduce the points on some of the staple cards, or, well, not staple cards because they were too expensive. And then maybe put some points on some individual cards that have caused some problems. Of course, they've already announced some of the changes in their articles because the communication behind Genesis has been so good. So I believe we all kind of know what to expect from this, but of course, we're going to see how well they handle the things that we've all been talking about in Genesis format. So let's hop right in. We started off with, okay, we see a bunch of random, almost random cards here, so it looks like it's going to be a longer update again, which is nice. I like seeing bigger updates to this format. Reversal quiz from 0 to 100. I assume this is just a quality of life, make it easier for judges, because, I mean, no one really was playing that card. DD Dynamite and Banquet of Millions going from 0 to 51. Not entirely sure what this is for. Maybe there's an OTK deck that popped off like that and they're trying to prevent that. Okay. Black Garden going from 0 to 51. I assume that is with the new Black Garden support, maybe from Doom of Dimensions, that someone figured out a good deck there. Earthbound Immortal Aslapiscu, Gem Knight Lapis Lazuli. A lot of these things, honestly, I mean, I'm not affected by this because I haven't really been playing with these. At the same time, I'm not entirely sure what these were used in, but I think this is something, when the list is going to be this long, there's going to be some cards where I think it's just likely someone somewhere has discovered a deck or a combo in which these cards were powerful, and so that's why they got some points, even if it is just like their internal testing, because they've referenced that in their article. So okay. Beelze of the Diabolic Dragons is a pretty hard to out monster in Genesis format, so it's going to 100 points. Interesting. Black-Winged Assault Dragon going from 0 to 1. Is this a Crimson Dragon target? Usually the 1-point cards have something to do with another 100-point card in order to not make them playable together, because I haven't really seen Black-Winged Assault Dragon being played, but of course for 1 point it still remains very playable outside of combinations with 100-point cards. Bramble Rose Dragon, same thing. Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon from 0 to 1. Interesting, since timeout is not really a thing in Genesis format, or like, well, with the new time rules, life points are not a thing in timeout, rather. I'm not sure what exactly the problem behind this card is, but once again, 1 point still remains playable. Evigishki Gust Kraken. This, I believe, is a very interesting change. I've been thinking about this card, and ironically, as someone who's been playing Yu-Gi-Oh for a long time, this card was sometimes a problem back in the day. You know, there was Gishki hand loops every once in a while. They would often use hieratic cards. And I was thinking, I haven't actually tried it yet, but I was thinking about if that was possible in Genesis format, and I guess other people were thinking about it too, so it goes to 100 points. That's good. We got some Gishki cards going to 1 point just to make sure you can't play them with Gust Kraken. Just in case someone isn't familiar, Gust Kraken is a card that lets you look at 2 cards from your opponent's hand, I believe, and then put 1 into the deck, and that is not hard ones per turn. So there's been a couple of combos where you would continuously like put the Gust Kraken, like summon it, use the effect, and then get it into the graveyard, back to the hand, and resummon it, and so on. So preventing that. Evil Swarm Ouroboros going from 67 to 100. I don't mind it. Card is toxic. Good riddance. Number 69 Heraldry Crest going from 0 to 1, probably preventing the Onomat deck, or like in general, no, Heraldic, not Onomat. Heraldic from using it together with a 100-point card like Ouroboros. We see Question going from 0 to 11. They mentioned this in the article. Don't think this was necessary, to be honest, but I also don't care. Last Turn going from 75 to 100 is probably due to Stevie causing some problems with this card, but technically you still could. It's just going to be way harder to search it because Trap Trick has points, and you can no longer copy it with no, Trap Trick I think has points, and Trapaholic also has points, and Transaction Rollback also has points, so it's going to be a lot harder to actually build around Last Turn. But still technically a playable card in the format. Metamorphosis from 10 to 5. This is what I'm referring to. I'm going to be really interested in this list right here. because a lot of cards in Genesys at the moment were, I feel like, statted or costed in a way where you weren't incentivized to play them because they were theoretically maybe good, but just simply too expensive. Metamorphosis is one of those cards. It was just not worth to put 30 points into a very situational card, especially since all the really broken targets are points for Metamorphosis. So like, why would you put 30 points into it if you can't summon anything broken with it? So it's going from 10 to 5. Summon Hugin with it, maybe. Premature Burial going from 25 all the way down to 7. This is interesting. I believe there is probably a point where cards like this become interesting to actually play in certain strategies. I don't know if 7 points is even enough for me to consider Premature. I mean, the only reason why Premature was ever better than something like Monster Reborn is because of certain combos where you would loop it back into your hand. I'm not entirely sure how you would do that at the moment in Genesys format. The fact that it's an equip spell makes it somewhat searchable in certain strategies, so maybe for 7 points you can include a single copy. But even a playset, you know, if your deck is really good with it and has synergy because you can add it back to your hand or whatever, might be worth considering playing 3 for 21. Monster Reborn going from 15 to 10. Personally, I predict Monster Reborn needs to get even cheaper to even see play. I've been talking about it with my chat sometimes, and people said like maybe for 3 to 5 points they would consider it. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I think Monster Reborn could even be 0 points, realistically. Mirage of Nightmare from 10 to 0. Now this is interesting. I was expecting this card to go to like 7 or 5. Because they did say they were going to reduce the cost of it. Realistically, though, I think this card only sees play in very niche strategies, and those were not really choosing to play it for 10 points, which technically for a card that's banned and advanced constructed, you would think 10 is pretty cheap. But realistically, I think for 0 points, it might be worth experimenting with this card. You know, like in Radiant Typhoon, pop it with your own Mystical Space Typhoon so you don't have to discard and so on and so forth. Interesting card for sure. I personally am pretty happy about seeing this go to 0 because it makes me able to experiment with it. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to be a problem in terms of the power level of this card. I think it is just fine. Card of Safe Return going from 40 to 33. I like this because this means you can build a deck around Card of Safe Return. Similar to Pot of Greed, you can basically say, I'm going to basically dump all of my points into this one Forbidden card and play 3 copies of it. And if I see it, it's going to make my strategy a lot stronger. Card of Safe Return, of course, more conditional, more situational than Pot of Greed because it doesn't play itself. It doesn't do anything on its own. But if you get it going, potentially draws a lot more cards than Pot of Greed. So interesting card in my opinion. But once again, I'm not scared of a 33 card of Safe Return. I think it's fine. Heavy Storm going from 20 to 10. That's pretty big. In general, I've talked about this as well. Side deck cards, and we're also seeing Feather Duster and Lightning Storm going down significantly. All of these are halved in points. This, I think, is good for 2 possible ways to play in Genesys format. The one is Blind Second, which at the moment is not super incentivized with those staples being so expensive. And the other thing is just like side deck cards, right? And I talked about this before, where putting cards into your side deck that have points feels really weird because basically it feels inefficient because you're not using your points on main deck staples that you can draw in all 3 games. In the case of Lightning Storm and Feather Duster and Heavy Storm, you would only side deck these going second probably. So realistically, you're using a decent chunk of your points for a card that you can only use in 1 game out of 3, which in my opinion is weird. And I also don't think that's going to change much with these cards going to this amount. Like, I still don't think I'm going to use 60 points in my side deck for 3 Lightning Storms or something like that. I could see playing like 3 Heavy Storms maybe for 30 points. That's something that, like, Heavy Storm is starting to get into the realistic territory in terms of playability. Realistically, I think these cards, like, their home is probably somewhere between 7 and 15. Like, I could see Lightning Storm because it can hit monsters as well. I could see Lightning Storm being like 15, Duster like 10, and Heavy Storm like 7. Around that is where I think people will start really considering these cards. But we'll see. Maybe 10 points for Heavy Storm is already enough of a reason to play it against certain matchups. Dominus Impulse and Dominus Spiral going down. I mean, this makes sense. I've not seen anyone play these cards. Even though Impulse is a very powerful hand trap, 75 points for 1 playset of non-engine, if it's not a super high impact one, I don't think is desirable, even for 25 points. Dominus Spiral for 5 points, I could see some decks play it. It's a good card. But it's just like, Right. If you put like 90 points or 75 points into one playset of a card, that card needs to be a real like match winner or game winner. And a one-on-one trade hand trap, even if it's one of the better ones, it just doesn't really feel worth when you're playing a deck that relies on non-engine, you know. And if I'm playing an all-engine deck, I would rather play like Pot of Greed for the same points than Dominus Impulse. But yeah. So honestly, I think Impulse is probably going to go even lower soon-ish. I could see it end up around like 15 or 20 where Ash Blossom is, which I think is like the golden standard for like a one-on-one trade hand trap. So I think that's where I could see it. And Ash Blossom is seeing some play, so it's been proven that like that is an amount that people are willing to pay for a hand trap. Nibiru going from 10 to 5, I'm a big fan of this decision. I think Nibiru is a very interesting card, but once again, it's the same thing. It's a card that you usually want to play in your side deck in Genesis format, because there isn't that many decks that really suffer from Nibiru in game 1, or rather there are some, but there's also a lot that don't care. And so it's like a risky card to include in your main deck, but in the side deck, I think it's a pretty valid card. So, but once again, putting 30 points into side deck Nibirus is rough. So I'm a fan of this card going down in points. And it's an interesting option, and that's the thing, right? You want people to be able to play this card because it can punish certain all-out combo strategies, but you don't want it to be 0, so everyone plays it. So I think 5 is a sweet spot. If everyone starts playing it now, I could see it going to 7 or 8 in the future, but for now, I'm happy with the 5, because 10, I think, was a little bit on the expensive side for a situational side deck card like that. Ghost Mourner and Ghost Ogre both going to 3. Both of these cards saw 0 play, because for 5 points, it just so happens that there are more impactful hand traps or non-engine in general. And for 3, I could see these seeing some play. You know, getting a playset for 9 points of Ghost Ogre or Ghost Mourner, I think that's a fair deal. And I think that's good. That's what you're trying to achieve. Sarav is going from 5 to 3. This card probably could have 0 points. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if this card needs to have any points, but for now it's going down. That's okay. Downward trend. Probably not going to see any play with this even. Maybe they were concerned about Voiceless Voice or other decks that can potentially search it. But yeah, sure. Baron going from 85 to 80. Now, realistically, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Baron the Fleur and what it does or like its power level, I can't really argue with the fact that like it's not quite as broken as a lot of the cards that have 100 points. You know, ultimately, I do think it's a very powerful card, and Omni Negates are not the most interesting thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! At the same time, it is not the same power level as some of the other 100 points endboard pieces that immediately floodgate or win the game or something like that, you know? So if some deck really wants to put a lot of points into making a Baron, I guess that's okay. But even 80, I think is still pretty expensive. Upstart from 0 to 3, Brow from 0 to 3. I agree with this. I've seen a lot of people mess around with different FTKs even after they've hit some of the draw cards on the recent ban list. So I do think this is warranted. I'm happy to see this because decks can still play these for relatively cheap if they really want to. But it's just like once you reach critical mass of these kind of cards that draw your entire deck, it's going to be too expensive to actually consistently FTK, hopefully. Mainly you need to make sure that they can't play like too many Pot of Greeds in these kind of decks. Pot of Extravagance going from 0 to 10, that is expected. That was exactly where I thought they were going to put it. I agree with this. I think 10 points for Pot of Extravagance is very fair. You do have to build your extra deck accordingly, but still drawing 2 cards is very powerful. And as it turns out, a lot of decks were doing it, so I'm happy it sees some points. But 10 points, honestly, I could still see playing Pot of Extravagance in a decent amount of decks. Oh, Trap Trick actually didn't have points, but now it does. It's going from 0 to 3. Probably, I was about to say probably because of last turn, do not pair it, but last turn you can't play 2 copies of anyways. General nerf to trap strategies, I suppose. Still, 3 points, not too expensive. I'm not too worried about that. That still remains playable. Rescue is Impulse going from 0 to 5. This was a very, very popular side deck card. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know if I like this one because I feel like I'm no longer interested in playing it for 15 points in my side deck. But I guess you still could. Realistically, I think this card should probably end up somewhere around like the 1 point or 3 point mark. I understand why they're doing it because this card was decently popular. At the same time, I feel like the gameplay that this card offers is not bad. So, but okay, well, 5 points is not the end of the world. Airlifter is getting cheaper, I suppose, because this also hits Rescue Ace, so they were like, okay, we're gonna take 5 points off of Airlifter. Airlifter is a more important card than Impulse for Rescue Ace, so this is a good deal if you're playing Rescue Ace, because you might just not play Impulse, but now you get cheaper Airlifters. Dragon's Mind, Solemn Scolding, Iron Thunder. They did announce that they were going to hit some of the Omni-Negate counter traps. I like this. I'm a big fan of this. Once again, these cards are powerful. These cards are good. These cards are often side deck cards. But the gameplay they offer is pretty strong, especially when you think of it in the context of Genesys format, where you can think of it as in like points. You know, if you manage to negate like your opponent's 20-point card or 30-point card with a 0-point counter trap, then you're really trading up in terms of card value and card quality, which is pretty strong in Genesys format. So I'm happy to see these get some points, but still where you could realistically decide to play them if you wanted to. Super Poly going from 10 to 13. That's fair. You know, card was popular. Card is very good. Goblin Biker Grand Breakout going from 0 to 7. I'm not sure what this was for. Maybe the Memento deck that's been doing well. Speedroid Terratop going from 3 to 7. Also fair enough. Nash Knight going from 0 to 10. I think that is very fair. This is one of the most powerful like rank 5s in Genesys format. Very strong end board piece. Very strong into boards. I think this is warranted. Evolzar Lars, once again, the Omni Negates or kind of Omni Negate cards getting some points. I'm down for that. Oh, Mitsurugi. Okay, Amino Habakiri, 100 points. Okay, there you go. This is your statement. They don't want exactly the same decks that are popular in the TCG or Advanced Constructed rather to be really good in Genesys as well. This is basically saying like, okay, yeah, Genesys is a Mitsurugi free zone. I guess you could play Mitsurugi without Habakiri, which maybe still ends up being an okay deck actually. I remember some people did play Mitsurugi before Habakiri came out, so maybe there's a way you could do it. The problem is I see Prayers and Ritual down here, but they're still not playable together. They're going down to 51 points. I think this makes sense because I feel like the reason behind the 60 was already the same reason. It was like you can't play both together. You have to decide for one of them and you can only play one copy, which that's what 51 does. And now that Habakiri has 100 points, I'm gonna be honest with you, these could probably be cheaper if they have to play without Habakiri. Yeah, like these could probably sit around like 20 or 30, but I guess we'll see. I think for now, this is going to make Mitsurugi very tough to play in Genesys format, which I do think is what they want here. I do think they want Genesys to offer the opportunity for other decks to be played than in Advanced Constructed. Okay, Dragonar going from 0 to 80. They did announce this. You know, cards that just cheat out the summoning mechanics from the extra deck would get some points. We have Draglubion going down to 80. We have Numeron Dragon going to 21. This is just, I guess, balancing together. They still have 101, but Draglubion becomes cheaper and Numeron Dragon becomes more expensive. Fair enough. Don't really mind this too much. Crimson Dragon going down to 80. Okay. They're doing the same thing here. They're readjusting these. The combination of these was always meant to be 101, but now they're just adjusting it slightly so that the individual cards, maybe Cosmic Crimson Dragon becomes a little more realistic to play now because it's just 80, quote unquote, which is still a lot. But okay. Ooh, Grizel, this is my favorite section so far. Grizel Prison 0 to 10, Flying Sea 0 to 7, Retaliating Sea 0 to 5, Kaliga 90 to 100, all 6 barrier statues 60 to 70. Yeah, hit those floodgates. Okay. Now, a lot of people would have probably liked to see Flying Sea go even higher or Grizel Prison, but like I said earlier, side deck cards, it's rough to justify spending a lot of points on, and I honestly don't think... Like, I think the reason these cards saw play is because they were free. There was no opportunity cost to putting these cards into the side deck. Now there is. Now, if you want to counter an Exceed deck, you have to spend 21 points on a playset of Flying Sea just in your side deck. Realistically, I could still see it happen. But I also think not a lot of people are willing to do that. And I guess if you're willing to do that, then fine, you pay the price, right? You get less powerful main decks if you're trying to make your deck better into Exceed decks post-side. But that's a trade-off. That's all what Genesys is about, you know? So this didn't need to be 100 points in my opinion, but it needed some points. So I'm happy with that. The other thing, self-explanatory. Very happy about these cards gaining some points. Awesome. Okay. Vanquish Soul, next up, Holy Sue, going from 10 to 33. Interesting. Honestly, I was somewhat considering them to make Holy Sue even more expensive to the point where you can't play 3 copies. However, So my argument is basically Holy Sue is really broken in Genesis format if you hard draw it. And so that's, I think, what they need to balance is like they need to put Vanquish Soul into a spot where it's playable, but you can't just play 3 Holy Sue as easily. So giving Vanquish Soul Holy Sue 33 points technically still allows for 3 Holy Sues in your deck for 99 points. However, because Raisin and Jiaolong I'm seeing right now getting some points here, you're gonna have to think about it. Okay, Jiaolong going from 0 to 11 and Raisin going from 0 to 11. So this is your 2 good fire Vanquish Souls. And because all of these cards have points now, it's also going to be basically impossible to play Ash Blossom and Pot of Extravagance in this deck. So if you want to play Vanquish Soul, it's going to have to be pure Vanquish Soul, and you're going to have to probably do something like, you could do 2 Holy Sue, 3 Raisin, but then you get no Jiaolong, which is rough. I think Jiaolong should at least be a 1-of, so you can summon it with Stake Your Soul, or search it with Raisin. So you're probably going to do like, let's say, 2 to 3 Raisin. If you do 3 Raisin, 1 Jiaolong, you're already at the point where that is 44 points. So you cannot do 2 Holy Sues anymore. You can do 1 Holy Sue and you can do 1 Holy Sue, 3 Raisin, and then you can do 3 Jiaolong, which is fine, but that's all your points. Or you can basically, you can cut down some amount of Raisins and then play like 7th Tachyon to search it or something, unless they put points on that too. I guess we're not done yet. But this is kind of exactly what I wanted, because this means you can still play Vanquish Soul. And trust me, if you're a fan of Vanquish Soul, you're still going to be able to play Vanquish Soul. You just can't play the Ashes and the Extravagances and all that stuff. Like, this is still going to remain a playable deck in my opinion. The sweet spot is probably going to be 1 Holy Sue and just search it, or play 2 Holy Sue and less of these. But I could really see a world where you do 3 Raisin, 1 Holy Sue for 66, and then like 1 or 2 Jiaolong, and then spend a couple of points on other cards. And I think that's fine. That's realistically, that's still playable. Exo Sister packs 0 to 10, Michaelis 0 to 10, Ichika Sayori Hime going for the 5 points. That's the spirit monster they play in Exo Sister. This is fair. So this is the section where they hit some of the current meta decks, right? This was the general reductions. This was the general increases, general reductions, draw cards, Mitsu, extra deck cheating, floodgates, and now we're doing meta decks. Dinomorphia getting some points because of last turn. Then we get a bunch of 1-pointers for generator because of the VFD problem. Very good. Don't punish the fair generator players, basically. Just make it impossible to really pair it with VFD. Levitin also in general a very good extra deck monster in any rank 9 strategy. I was playing it in Radiant Typhoon, so that's that. We got Treasures of the Kings going from 0 to 5, hitting Odeon, but not too hard, honestly. If that's the only change to Odeon, Odeon is still looking pretty good. We've got Nerva for Archmage, 0 to 5. Okay, so we're not hitting Archmage and Odeon too hard. They were more like the 2nd or 3rd best deck behind Vanquish Soul and maybe Generator, so I'm okay with this. Small hits, but hits. Dodo Warrior, 0 to 7. All right, fair enough. Onomat as well. Odd Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss for the Red Dragon Archfiend deck. Totem Bird 0 to 3. Cicada King, okay. Generic extra deck hits for Radiant Typhoon. Not hitting the Radiant Typhoon cards directly, but hitting the extra deck. And these cards are both really good in that deck, so you're probably going to want to give up those points, at least for Totem Bird. I've been making Totem Bird more often than Cicada King, personally, so I would definitely be willing to invest some points into those. So, interesting. K9 getting even more points. Noroi 15, Jokul 15, Werewolf 10. Very nice. Very good. Enter Blathnir 0 to 13. Okay, I mean, this is basically rank 9 Ouroboros, so this makes a lot of sense. This card was very good in Generator. This card was very good in Radiant Typhoon. So once again, not hitting those cards directly as hard, you know, like the Generator, just a couple of small hits, but then the extra deck options are being taxed. That's good. Same with Trishula. I was a little worried about 3-point Trishula being very easy to abuse, so there we go. Foxy Tune, 5 points. Okay, Punk. Seen a lot of experimentation with Punk, but 5 points is still very affordable. Megalith Anastasis, going from 0 to 33. I've played against Megalith, and that deck is not bad, so they are aware of it. 33 points seems pretty harsh, at least if I'm looking at what the other decks have received. This feels maybe a little bit harsh on Megalith, because the deck was, I mean, the deck was good, but I mean, like, if you're, I don't know if it was better than Punk or better than Radiant Typhoon or Archmage or something like that, but it was a good deck, so I don't really hate the fact that they hit it. Maybe it's okay because this is searchable, but it is also a consistency card on its own. But basically, if you want to play 3 of it now, you're going to have to dump your entire points into it. This is a big hit, I think, to Megalith, but yeah. Okay, here we go. The Fallen Anti-Virtue is 15 points. Albion to... Oh, God. Okay, they are immediately hard nerfing the Fallen Anti-Virtuous package. I played this yesterday against Peeps on stream in my Radiant Typhoon deck, and the card feels really nice. 15 points and Albion 20 points to pair with it. That's going to be rough as a generic staple. I guess you can play 3 of it for 45 and then 2 Albions for... That's 85 total. I don't know if that's worth it anymore. I really don't know if that's worth it anymore. I was willing to pay, like, I was about to say like 10 points per copy is fine if Albion is free. If Albion is 20 and this card is 15, I don't know if I want to play it as a generic card. That's rough. That's hard. That's a hard hit on that card. Okay, Branded in general. What did they do to Brand? Jesus. Titaniclad 10, Sprint 10, Grand Guignol 10, Brigand 10, the Dragon that Devours 10. So it's just they want all the targets for the Fallen and the Virtuous to have points, so you can't just play free targets, I suppose. Is that what this is? Is this all the targets? Maybe. Lubellion, the Searing Dragon, down to 10, Mirror Jade down to 10. Okay, this technically for Branded is not the worst thing because it means you get more freedom in terms of your extra deck options. You can play 2 Mirror Jade, 1 Lubellion, and then 2 Albion or something. But Branded Fusion is even more expensive now, 40 points. So if you just play 1 Branded Fusion, you still get 60 points in the extra deck. So that could be 1 Albion, 1 Lubellion, 1 Mirror Jade. That's 40. And then some of the other options. Branded is pretty rough in Genesis format, I think. But technically doable is the interesting thing, right? With all these, of course, they add up. But technically, you could still work with it, which I think is interesting. Mercurier going from 0 to 5 as well, and Masquerade going to 16. Okay. Ooh, we've been talking about this. Some generic searchers. Okay, Reinforcement of the Army down to 35. Still too expensive, in my opinion. Teleport down to 35. Nice for Psychic decks that can search it, but as generic card, still too expensive, in my opinion. Same with Tenki. 35. Look, they made generic searches very expensive in Genesis format. I understand why. Very powerful Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but honestly, I think consistency is just not worth this much in deck building. Like, you'll find other options to make your deck more consistent. If anything, they should have put more points on 7th Tachyon, because I don't think... I'm just going over this real quick. We're done after this. 7th Tachyon is not on here. So these are Fossil Dig, Fire Formation Tenki, all down to 35. This is all the right direction. I agree with this, but I don't think this is just enough yet. But I guess we'll see. I personally think somewhere around 20, at least for the ones that search, not for Teleport. Teleport probably around 25. But for searching in general, around 20 or 15 to 20, I think is fine. I think they should put more points on the engines themselves, rather than the searchers that make them consistent. Nightmare Apprentice down to 20, fair enough. Didn't really see that much play. Ashina, I don't know why this card has points. There is no link once in Genesis format, so you can't link it off. Hidden City down to 13. This is very fair. I think Subterror is, without the floodgates, I think Subterror is a completely acceptable strategy in terms of playstyle and power level. Union Hangar down to 25. Emergence, a lot of searches going down here, which is good, right direction. Sword Soul was hit way too hard in general, and this is the only reduction for it, so still rough, I think, but the right direction. Geyseris to 0. Okay, Gladiator Beast, yeah. Proving Ground 25, Rejection 10. Tamer Editor gaining points. I guess it's still a net positive for Gladiator Beasts. I'm not a Gladiator Beast expert. I don't know if this is like a good trade-off, but it seems good because these cards are getting a lot cheaper, whereas this is only 13 points more expensive. So if you play like if you can manage to get away with one of this, you can basically play all of the above. Not 3 Proving Grounds, but probably fine. The Ninjas going from 20 to 5. This is something that a lot of people were talking about. You know, why do these have so many points? Now 5 points, I guess you can stop complaining about the Ninjas, because now you can easily play multiple of each and still have a bunch of points left over. Sprite Starter down to 10. Interesting. No one really has messed with Sprite, I feel like, so maybe. Maybe with Metamorphosis. going down to 5, you can play. I might, maybe I'm cooking Runic Sprite. Who knows? Phantom of Yubel up to 76. Good toxic card. Nightmare Throne less expensive, however, but you can't play both together, so I guess that's fine. Grave Skirmer going to 0 and Vanishing Lanius going to 0. Okay, this is by and large. This is basically a lot of this is what I expected. So because their communication was so good in advance, I'm not completely blown away by any of these changes. A lot of this was talked about in advance, and I agree with a lot of the general things that they're doing here. And I really like that this update is relatively big. Of course, we've been talking about it for a while now, but that's just because the nature of this. There's going to be a lot of changes, so there's a lot to talk about. There is, with very few exceptions, I guess no, there's nothing here that goes in the wrong direction, in my opinion. Like, all of these changes are going the right way, which is good. And that's also, that says a lot. If there's this many changes, and I basically agree with all of it in terms of the direction that things are going. Sure, I think in some cases, this is not enough, you know, like reinforcement of the army is still too expensive, for example, or maybe branded, maybe taxed a little bit too hard, or the fallen and the virtues maybe a little bit too expensive, so they maybe overshot the goal a little bit there. But like in general, this is all very good. And I'm most excited about the point reductions, because those are the kind of cards where now you have something new to cook with. You know, Mirage of Nightmare, 0 points, maybe we can come up with something there. Metamorphosis, 5 points, you know, maybe I can finally summon Hugin. Some non-engine might be back on the menu. This is the most important stuff to me. And the second most important stuff is that the current meta decks are hit appropriately. And I think that is very well done here. I think Vanquish Soul is hit very well. I like that we're also getting small changes to the other meta decks in Genesys format, like Exosister, Generator, Archmage, Onomat, Radiant Typhoon, K9. All of these engines deserved small hits. Megalith Punk. This is good. This is good balancing. These are all decks that I wanted to be playable, but not completely free. So I like that a lot. Floodgates are being hit. That's awesome. General, I can't wait to just... I'm going to my first locals on Wednesday, by the way, for Genesys format. Let me know what I should play, because I was originally planning to play Radiant Typhoon with the Fallen and the Virtuous, expecting it to be more like 10 points. Now I don't know if I want to play the Fallen and the Virtuous anymore. I could still play Radiant Typhoon, but maybe I'll cook Metamorphosis Runic Sprite. I'll think about that. Anyways, overall, very positive with this. Hope this keeps up. I think Genesys format is delivering exactly what I was looking for from this format. I think it's awesome, and very happy with this update, honestly. I guess, okay, let's talk about a few things that are missing, just for further or future improvements. Dimension Shifter did not get an update. I honestly was expecting Dimension Shifter to get more expensive, because it was also one of the main talking points in all of the discussions. Dimension Shifter is a pretty annoying card to play against. Yes, Genesys format is a slower format, so in theory the card is less impactful. Still, I think the play pattern it provides, if it is effective, is pretty bad. So I was really hoping for that card to gain points. Instead, they gave points to, for example, Exosister, which is making it harder for them to include the Dimension Shifter. I guess I still think in those kind of scenarios it'd be better if the Dimension Shifter is more expensive. Like at least make it 15 or 20 points for now. Because I think 10 points is just way too cheap for that card. You know, that's cheaper than an Ash Blossom, and I would really rather play against an Ash Blossom than a Dimension Shifter in most cases. So Dimension Shifter is not on here. Dimensional Fissure is still 0 points. I was hoping for that on the Floodgate list. Other than that, I'm sure there's something else that they've missed, because I mean, there's so many Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but I'm happy with the Flying Sea getting points. That was something that I was really hoping for. I was really hoping for Nib to become cheaper, so I could potentially side deck it in some decks to be better off against some combos. Yeah, I think we've covered most of the things, and that's I think it's pretty good. But let me know if I'm sure there's something that I've missed right now that should have gone down in points or should have gotten more points or some points. Let me know what you think. I personally am pretty happy with this for now, especially considering the fact, you know, we're probably going to get another update in like 4 to 6 weeks. which is nice. So if they've missed something small here, they can correct it soon, which is the nice thing about Genesys format. Anyways, that's been my initial reaction to this list. Let me know what you think, and thank you for watching.